Hello and welcome. My name is Al Barrows, and this is UFO Disclosure, the podcast that's meant to show an average person's reaction to all the UFO, UAP news from everywhere and anywhere. Today, I'd like to relate something that I saw on Street of Silence. It involves a Ukrainian couple that got quite a bit of exposure on TV after passing a lie detector test confirming their very strange and sexualized extraterrestrial encounter. On the evening of January the 11th, 2008, Olga Voronezhky was relaxing at home, enjoying her maternity leave. Olga needed to pick up a few things from the store, so she asked her two daughters, Vanessa and Angelica, to run out to the store for her. The two girls would head out, and when they returned home, they reported a strange object up in the sky. According to the girls, the object was flashing white, yellow, and red, and didn't appear like anything they had ever seen. Olga thought they were mistaken, but soon agreed to go outside and look. There she would spot a strange yellow light in the distance, but being pretty far off and pretty high up, Olga and her husband didn't think too much of it. The family then returned inside and soon went to bed. Around 2 a.m. on January the 12th, Vladimir woke up to a white-violet light in his room. He glanced over and fell back asleep, not thinking too much of it. His daughter Angelica, though, wouldn't be able to sleep through it and woke up to the light shining through her blinds, then ran into her parents' room and woke up her mom, Olga. As Olga woke up, she was frightened and shook her husband, Vladimir, until he got up. She then screamed at him to look up to the sky, and to their surprise, their ceiling was completely transparent. There was a huge disc-shaped UFO hovering above their bedroom. Vladimir and Olga hurried outside to view the craft. Then the two, engulfed in the light, became paralyzed and couldn't move. Olga would then start to hover and be pulled upward. She was spinning as she was ascending and would later recall she couldn't move. Vladimir would then be pulled up, and soon the two woke up in a transparent room, both paralyzed, unable to move. 12 beings would enter the room they were in, and they were all short, around 3.5 feet tall, with black, lifeless eyes and 3 fingers on each hand. And although they appeared to be grays to Vladimir, he would later recall that they had hoods on that covered their faces most of the time. There was one being, though, who appeared to be the leader. He stood in the back and was around 6 feet tall. His face was covered completely, but his body resembled a man's. The entities would then grab Olga and drag her into a nearby chair. An upset Vladimir, now free from his paralysis, ran toward Olga but hit some type of invisible wall. 2 small beings approached him and informed him telepathically he needed to calm down and that they would soon be home, safe. Vladimir, though, wasn't satisfied with the answer and became increasingly hostile. The beings, seemingly confused, tried to subdue Vladimir, but Vladimir was able to escape from them. The bewildered aliens would continue to telepathically ask Vladimir why he resisted, as if his efforts were pointless. They stared straight into his eyes each time they telepathically spoke with him, and oddly, the language Vladimir heard was his own, which is a combination of Russian and Ukrainian. Regardless of his efforts, though, the beings were able to overtake Vladimir. They then stuck 4 metallic rods into his chest, and Vladimir was completely paralyzed. He couldn't move at all, other than his eyes, and he was forced to watch the beings experiment on his wife. The experiments on Olga were strange, and while Olga was standing up, they had managed to slice open her stomach. Olga never felt a thing, though. She said she was asked to lay down, and as she did, she could see the inside of her stomach and also smell her organs. Olga then would watch as the entities extracted samples from her organs. She felt no pain at all, And after they were done, they used some type of tool to stitch her back up. Amazingly, her stomach had no scars whatsoever, and it looked like nothing had even happened. The aliens communicated telepathically with her and informed her they wouldn't hurt her and that they were just curious. And while this was occurring, Vladimir underwent some sort of experimentation as well. Vladimir was then taken to another room where he was introduced to a 6-foot tall being, the smaller aliens referred to as the Professor. Vladimir asked the Professor why they were taken. The Professor responded, "It has to be done," he said, and informed Vladimir to compensate for their suffering, the two would be taken on a tour throughout the galaxy. Olga and Vladimir were then placed in recliners, and the room turned fully transparent. The stars and planets were all around them. Then a big bright flash occurred, and the two were now hovering over an unknown planet. The beings then guided them to another room where they boarded a smaller craft which was cigar-shaped. They then broke off from the mothership and flew down to the planet below. On the planet, there appeared to be mountains similar to anthills where the ETs lived, and Vladimir speculated that they lived under the surface. According to the Professor, the planet operated under a strict set of rules similar to an ant colony or beehive. The Professor would go on to tell him that the beings didn't eat or drink, but absorbed nutrients through their skin. The Professor said they were interested in them because human beings displayed characteristics such as happiness, sadness, jealousy, and other emotions. So these ETs seem to have been interested in humans because of our emotions, and for some reason or other, they did not have any emotions of their own. Vladimir and Olga would travel up to the mothership again, and soon another flash of light was emitted, and they were at a different place in outer space. At this point, Vladimir asked the Professor how they were able to travel so quickly, and the Professor would explain how they did it, but Vladimir didn't quite understand it. So although Vladimir didn't understand the Professor's explanation of how they traveled through space, he did recall him saying that it did not involve wormholes. After the Professor's explanation, according to Vladimir, one of the smaller ETs was upset and telepathically told the Professor they know too much. Now, Vladimir was able to hear this, and a conversation ensued whether they should be terminated or not, or returned home. According to Vladimir, he became hostile and threatened to become violent and uncooperative if they kept him in outer space. Things seemed to calm down, though, after this, and what happened next would be perhaps the most shocking aspect of this story. Okay, so I feel that I need to warn you that the next part of this story some of you might find shocking or even take issue with. So with Olga in the very same room, Vladimir was asked to have sex with a female being, but Vladimir found her hideous. She was bald with green skin. Vladimir rejected her right out, citing her appearance. But the extraterrestrials were very interested in how humans had sexual intercourse. And Vladimir seemed to think he and his wife's return to Earth depended on this. The aliens then walked the female alien to a platform where a bright light shone down on her. After the light faded, a new woman appeared, one with a beautiful face, exactly Vladimir's taste. Vladimir then came to the stunning realization that they had read his mind in terms of what he believed a beautiful woman should look like. Oddly, the woman's body was being covered up by some sort of sheet in front of her, and Vladimir couldn't see the body. The sheet would soon disappear, and Vladimir began to make love to her. So the ETs not only wanted to study how humans have sexual intercourse, but they also wanted to observe Olga's reaction to Vladimir having sex with someone else in front of her. Olga screamed at the extraterrestrials to make them stop. The beings, though, wanted to understand human sexual intercourse, but wanted to gauge Olga's emotions and the feelings of jealousy. So after Olga became increasingly upset, Vladimir stopped. Olga explained to the ETs that human beings don't just have sex, there must be feelings and emotions involved. The beings themselves couldn't have these feelings. This is what they wanted to understand. At this point, Vladimir and Olga were returned home, and the professor stated they would contact them again in 2 years, in the year 2010. So it's not known whether the two were ever contacted again by these ETs in the year 2010, but in the ensuing years after their TV exposure, there were many skeptics that accused them of a hoax. So, although there's no tangible proof in this case, both Olga and Vladimir did pass a lie detector test. I decided to cover this case because I found it interesting that extraterrestrials would think that we would have sexual intercourse without any emotions being involved. And I've always wondered whether it's true what they say that extraterrestrials have had their emotions genetically removed. My name is Al Barrows. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you.